Hello, my name's Kingsley Singleton, Deputy Editor of Digital Photo, and welcome to this Photoshop Made Easy video lesson. In this tutorial, we're going to look at the Levels palette. What are its features, how do they work, and how can they be used to improve your pictures? The Levels palette's primary function is to control or adjust contrast in your digital photos, and by using it the right way, you can turn flat, lifeless pictures like this one into something much more attractive. Our starting point here is very grey and dull, but after a few minutes work using levels, we have an image with a proper tonal range, including some deep shadows and some crisp highlights. It's altogether more pleasing, and here I'll show you how it's done. Now, most digital cameras can do a pretty good job of making sure there's a full range of tones in your image at the time of shooting, but it's always worth checking the levels to make sure you've got your shadows and your highlights just where you want them. And you can even use the Levels palette in a creative way, drawing attention to certain parts of the image using light and shade. Here, for instance, we've not just used levels globally over the whole image, but actually lightened the foreground and specifically this lead-in line independently of its surroundings. The sky, meanwhile, has been darkened, and all we had to do both times was make a simple selection before we applied the levels. Okay, let's bring up the palette on screen and see how it works. And to give you a clearer idea of what's going on, I'm going to use a simple diagram before we move on to a proper photo. I'll just close down these two images for now and bring up the file called Tonal, which is on this month's CD. In Photoshop Elements, the Levels palette is opened by coming up to Enhance, down to Adjust Lighting and picking Levels. While in the full version of Photoshop, you need to go to the Image menu and then down to Adjustments to find it. But most commonly, we just bring it up by pressing Ctrl on the keyboard and then L. Once it pops up on screen, you'll see a histogram showing the tonal range of the image and how it's distributed. Right from pure black pixels down at this end to pure white pixels at this end. The steep lines in the graph show how many pixels of a certain tone there are, and by looking at this one, we can see there's a pretty even spread, apart from these 5 peaks. So if we move our Levels palette just down here for a moment, we can see that this kind of even spread is showing off the even graduation from black through to white, and the peaks within the graph are these solid chunks of black, white and grey here. So our black edge of our graduated line and this solid black chunk here is represented by this steep peak. Then we have our quarter tone represented by this one, our mid-tone grey right here, it's slap bang in the centre of the histogram, our 3/4 tone grey, which is here, and finally the white here in a little box, and also this end of the graduated scale, right here at the right end of the graph. And we can also see this if I just move the palette up a little, so that we can see the output levels bar here, and this relates directly to the pixels above it in the histogram. And by checking the two against one another, we can see that our image on screen runs from black here, perfect black on the left-hand side, through to perfect white on the right-hand side. And that means there's a full tonal range in this picture. And I'm just going to cancel out of the Levels palette for a moment so I can move our example picture up to the side just so we get a slightly better look at it, and bring the levels back by pressing Ctrl and L again. And now we'll start having a look at how we can affect the tonal range of the image by moving these sliders, the output level sliders and the input level sliders. So let's start with the input levels, and these are known as the black point slider, the gamma slider and the white point slider. And if I click and drag the black point slider to the right hand side, you'll see that we're changing the distribution of the tones in the image. And by comparing it to the output level slider below, you can see that all these grey tones have now turned black. And if I continued to move it to the right, you'll see the mid-tones starting to change now, and even those 3/4 tones getting much darker as well. We're making a large proportion of the image black. To take us back to where we started, either press the reset button, or if you're using Photoshop, hold down the Alt key and the cancel will turn into reset. Give that a click and the values will be reset. Similarly, if I move the white point slider to the left, I change the tonal range of the image and I make more parts of it white. So now you can see all the way down to that mid-tone grey and even beyond, it's all becoming white. It's important to remember though that although I'm making more parts of the image white, the black is remaining the same. We're not shifting the black point, only the white point. And the same thing happens to the shadows. If I click and drag that black point slider over to the right again, the white remains white, we're simply changing where the tones appear in the image. So let's take that back to 0 and have a look at the gamma slider. And this one just really affects the overall exposure of the image, so by pushing it left or right, I can make it lighter or darker. Now that looks kind of similar to what the black and the white point sliders are doing, but you'll see much more of a change if I come down to these output levels and shift them around. So what I'm going to do is click on the black output level and move that one into 50, and do the same with the white output level, just clicking on that and dragging it down to 205. Now immediately you'll have seen that our image has lost its pure black and pure white tones, and it all just looks a little bit grey. And if I click OK to change the levels in this way, and then bring the levels palette back with Ctrl and L again, you'll see exactly what's happened to the histogram. We've lost all of those black and all of those white pixels by changing the output levels. And what you'll see now, if I move the gamma slider, which is also known as the mid-tone slider, is that while I can make the image lighter or darker, we're not experiencing that full range of tones. We can get it black up here or white down here, but not at the same time. Because using those output levels has compressed the tonal range of the image, to get it back we need to click and drag our black point slider in to meet the end of the histogram there. We've set it to 50, which is what we reduced it by originally, and the same with the white. Drag that into 205, and once again we're ensuring that there's pure black and pure white in the image. That compression of the tonal range has been counteracted, and we're now back to a full range of tones. And if I move the gamma slider again, you can see there's a big difference. We're still making the image lighter or darker on the whole, but only between our set white and set black points. So wherever we move it, we've still got pure black and pure white. Another way to ensure you've got a full range of tones in your image is to use the set black point and set white point eyedroppers. And if I just hit reset again, I'll show you how they work. We're now back to our dull grey image with its incomplete tonal range. Remember, it's only going from these kind of light greys through to these dark greys, not full white or full black. And to set that black point just where I want it to be, I just click on the set black point eyedropper and then click on the image where I want it to be black. And as soon as I do that, you'll see the histogram shoot across to the left hand side there, making sure there's pure black in it. There we go, we've now got pure black here on the left hand side. We can see it because the histogram is joining the very left of the scale there, right at 0. And now we can do the same with the white, just clicking on the set white point eyedropper, clicking again on the image where we want it to be white, or where we know it should be white, and just as before, our histogram lurches out to the side, giving us that full range of tones. Of course, I don't have to click on an area of the image that I know to be white. I could click on this mid-tone grey here, and doing that will mean that it and all of the areas in the image that were lighter than it will become white. Okay, let's just reset our palette then for a moment, drag our white point and our black point back into where we want them to be, and we'll press OK to this, minimize our test image there, and we'll see how it works on a real photo. Just bringing up the image now called Levels, which you'll also find on this month's CD. And then if we once again press Ctrl and L to bring up the Levels palette, you'll see the problem that we've got. Once again, an image without a full range of tones. We've got no true black in the image, just these few tones that are down here in the kind of quarter tone area, and no highlights either. So if you've got an image like this, there's only one thing to do. Click on the black point slider, drag that into the right, and do the same with the white point slider, just clicking and dragging in until it meets the end of the histogram. And there you'll see immediately, if I click on and off the preview button, we've made quite a difference. We've got a much more sprightly looking picture, certainly compared to our dull original. It's still a bit lacking in punch though, so what we're going to do is click and drag that black point slider a little bit further in. And a good way of seeing how this is affecting your image is just to hold the Alt key on the keyboard down as you're clicking and dragging that slider, and you'll get a preview of which areas are turning black. Now what we want really is a little bit of black around the place just to define some of the detail. We don't want any of those kind of clumps of black pixels though, because that's where we're losing detail, so we'll stop it at around 55. And we can do the same to the white point slider, just holding Alt and dragging that in until we can see there that we're getting some highlights. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. We've certainly got a full range of tones throughout the image, and it's certainly looking a lot healthier than before. But it's still not looking quite as good as it could, so now we're going to have a go at changing the levels selectively, darkening the undergrowth either side of our lead-in line here, and also darkening the sky. So let's take a look at the latter first. I'm now just going to select the freehand lasso tool there and draw out a selection over the sky. And once the marching ants have appeared, I'm just going to need to soften the edge of this selection so we don't get a nasty hard edge between the levels adjusted part of the image and that's been left alone. So just come up to select, down to refine edge, and we'll just set that feathering at about 200 pixels. Take the smoothness down to 0 and hit OK. In older versions of Photoshop or Elements, you can just go to Select and Feather. So now we've got our nice soft selection. Press Ctrl and L again to bring up the levels. And now we get a very different looking histogram than before, because all we're taking account of here are those pixels that are within our selected area. Now we want to darken this area, so just click on the gamma slider and drag it to the right. There you'll see it darkening, and when you're happy with how that looks, just hit OK. Press Ctrl and D on the keyboard or up to Select and down to Deselect to get rid of those marching ants. And the darkening on the sky isn't quite sort of even there, so we'll just make another quick selection of the top left corner. Once again up to Select, down to Refine Edge. We'll use the same feather radius as before, click OK, and then back to Levels with Ctrl and L. And this time, even if we click and drag the gamma slider over to the right, you see we're not getting quite as pleasing an effect. There's still too much white in that area of the sky. So what I'm also going to do is click and drag the white output level to the left. And that's just kind of darkening those white pixels that are within our selected area and giving the sky a much more even look. Once you're happy with that, click OK. Press Ctrl and D again to get rid of those marching ants. And already that sky looks much better. We're now just going to make a similar adjustment either side of this lead-in line, just kind of darkening these areas down to give it more prominence. So just using the freehand lasso tool again, click and drag out a selection over the areas that you want to darken. Once you've selected this side, just hold down the Shift key on the keyboard to add to the selection and draw out a similar area this side as well. Something like that should be okay. Maybe we'll just kind of add to the selection again, taking it in a little further kind of towards the tree in the distance, just kind of pushing the viewer's eye into that focal point, and then back up to Select, down to Refine Edge, and this time we're going to use a feather radius of 250 pixels, just to give a really soft edge to those areas. Click OK, come back to the Levels palette with Ctrl and L, and once again you'll see that we get a very different histogram to the one that we received for the whole image, or the selection we made of the sky. This time it's very much kind of banked up in the darker areas, down in the shadows and those quarter tones, just as you can see in our image. And now to darken them even further, we'll just click on the gamma slider and push it to the right. And we'll also, a bit like we did in the sky, click on the white output level slider and drag that just a touch to the left. We can also probably just bring that black point slider in a little, just holding down Alt on the keyboard again as we did before, just to see where those shadows are starting to creep in. That's probably just about enough. As I said before, you don't want too many areas of blocked out shadow. Just a little bit of darkness to kind of concentrate the eye towards the center. So that's looking pretty good. and we can see how it's affecting the image again just by clicking on and off the preview, and we'll hit OK to exit the palette, and then Control and D on the keyboard to get rid of those marching ants. And that's starting to look pretty good. And if we compare these results against our simple levels adjustment, I think you'll agree it looks a lot more dramatic. The final things we're going to look at are two functions of the levels palette that we didn't touch on before, so let's just bring it up again. And these are the channel button here above the histogram, and also the set grey point eyedropper. And the latter, the eyedropper, just lets us do some basic colour correction to our image. So if we click on it and try and find a mid-tone grey somewhere in the shot, we should be able to set our white balance from that. It's a little bit random, and it's usually best just to click around until you find something quite warm and pleasing. But more useful, if I just hit the reset button for a second there, is the channel button here, which allows us to change the levels on each of the red, green and blue channels that go to make up the full colour image. In this case, we're going to apply a slight warm-up using the red channel, so click on the channel button, then click on red. And now, by clicking and dragging the sliders, we affect only the red light in the image. Now you can be a little heavy-handed with these sometimes and cook up some pretty kind of eye-watering effects, but in this case we're just going to click and drag the gamma slider and move that a little bit over to the left. And just clicking on and off the preview shows you that we've warmed up that image nicely. We'll be coming on to more forms of colour correction and how to use the levels palette in this way in a later part of this series, so make sure you look out for that. But for now, I'm just going to click OK and take a look at our finished image. And you can see that just by using the simple tools within the levels palette, we've gone from something pretty unacceptable, a very dull and washed out image, to one that's much more pleasing. We've made sure that there's a full range of tones in the image, from some black shadows through to some crisp white highlights, and it's all quick and easy to do. So make sure you give it a try with those two example images. You'll find them on this month's CD, as I said, and then have a go with your own shots. Check the levels, make sure that your tonal range is just as you want it, and your pictures will be guaranteed to improve. See you next time.